Santos, and we are back for this Modern Mystic.
Yes, and we wanted to dive a little deeper into the science of spirituality so that people can get a better understanding or grasp a little better what we mean by that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to start off by this triangle. So this triangle is the spiritual, psychology, and science.
Yes, we thought about putting this together this way because you'll see it being repeated in other circles as far as spirituality and science, religious and science circles. But living in this 3D world that we live in, we figured we'd create a 3D triangle to represent these foundations, right? Where it is spiritual, psychology, and science. And because those represent thought, matter, and energy, mind, body, and soul. And some of you guys know the group Earth, Wind, and Fire, and I don't think it's a coincidence that that's that way, because a lot of times we say that the body is the earth, and our thoughts are like the wind, and then our soul is energy, and it's burning with desire like fire. And so I think we picked some good foundational aspects for us to go from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're going to start off with the psychology. So I'm actually trained as a therapist. I went to school for years and years. I got my master's degree in counseling psychology. And then I worked in rural communities, in the inner city. I've kind of done it all in every setting I feel like there could have been in. And there's a lot that I had learned, and there's a reason that I am not in that field anymore. There's limitations to psychology, but it's also part of what we all need to know about ourselves, right? So that's what we're doing here, is we're bridging the gap between our mind, body, and soul so that you can find that true healing, because it doesn't take one or the other, it's all of it. And so we are here giving you decades of experience, really, truly getting you past into the basics, clarifying the basics of spirituality and personal growth, so that you don't have to spend years and years and years in therapy or doing one or the other and saying, it's not working. Well, yeah, we know it's not working. We've been there, done that, and these are our tips and tricks and our shortcuts. So
yeah, it's all about balance. It's all about balance.
Yeah. Okay, so in psychology, especially Western psychology, there are limitations to that, right? So like Western psychology is based off of studies done largely on like Caucasian populations, or populations of people who are easy to assess, easy to gather data on. And then it's usually also done by these professionals, right? Scholars. And we all know, if we study history, that the scholars are always the conquerors, because they're the ones who dominated at that time in order to be the ones empowered to write the history. So knowing that, we have to remember that there's a bias, there's a cultural, historical bias in Western psychology of mostly white men. So the DSM-5, which is what classifies the diagnoses that you would get from a therapist or a doctor or a psychiatrist, they're going to give you a diagnosis based off of a book, right? A book of like classification or like characteristics that then give you a diagnosis depending on how long and whatnot you've been having the symptoms. And that was written by white psychiatrists. So that's one of the large limitations of psychology, just as its own philosophy, right? So just remembering that those studies and whatnot were done in a very biased setting, and human beings are evolving all of the time. And by the time a study is even done or comes out, there's so much movement within psychology and evolution that we have to remember that a lot of times science is outdated and slow to kind of get understood and accepted by society and then even implemented, and by then it's probably outdated again. So the other main limitation I wanted to mention is that psychology is the mind, right? So it's a limitation to just believe that you can solve all of your problems or heal all of yourself by your mind alone. And that's why we include these other things. You have to have this kind of trifecta, or this other encompassing of these other philosophies and understandings, because your mind can only get you so far. And actually the science that's coming out now is science saying that healing actually isn't done by talk therapy. Healing is more done by experiencing in your body that trauma or that thing that you're scared of, or that maybe fear of rejection in a relationship or whatever it might be, that's like hard programmed into your body in your limbic system in your brain because of trauma and memory, that those things aren't necessarily true anymore, right? And we have to help our body upgrade to our current reality, and that's where the healing comes in. And a lot of even therapy is going towards that way. You see a lot of people talking about somatic therapies and embodiment, and all of that is talking about how to bring the body back on board, and then it's not just the mental mind.
Yes, and that's a good segue. I don't know if you guys know who Joe Dispenza is. It's somebody that's taught me a lot in my growth as far as, and you'll hear me talk about him a little bit more. But one of the things that's very interesting is he does talk about like the mind as far as your emotions and the way you think and how it can affect you physically, right? So that's what that's good for, psychology. So you understand how your mind and your thinking can affect you on a physical level, and then that physical level. But then what they're saying is that in order for you to change your emotions and such, you need to physically do something to your body to change the way you feel. That's why they get into meditation, exercise, somatic therapy, because once you change, you're able to stop the psychological thoughts from continuing, and all it's doing is building up your belief in this emotion or physical aspect of being. So you need to change physically what's going on with you to interrupt that thought, right? So that's why we bring in the science of it, which is the matter or the body, right? And then when you get the science of it, the psychology, the mental, the body, the physical, then what it helps us do is change the frequency at which we operate at. And what quantum physics is finding out, the science, right? What quantum physics is finding out is that the frequency that we send out into the universe is what creates our reality. And so it is very important to understand these three aspects, because your thoughts affect your body affect your thoughts, and both of those affect your frequency, your vibe, your vibration, which is what creates your reality. Right? And
that's what ancient wisdom, that's what spiritual teachers and gurus and they all have said this. They've been saying it for thousands of years. And so really what's happening is it's not that we're discovering anything new. It's just that we're bringing the science, we're allowing the science to catch up to spiritual stuff that people's souls have already been living within for thousands of years. But because our mind likes to think it's smarter than other things, so that's why we it's almost like the science and psychology come together to birth your spiritual essence. Okay, so what we're really in a roundabout way saying in a lot of words, right, is that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And so if we can understand that our spirit is in a physical body that is affected by inner environments, by what we eat and what we consume through our eyes, or what kind of relationships we have that are affecting us vibrationally and energetically and psychically, and our environments outside of us, like the people, but then also like where we choose to live, or how much sun we're getting, how much exercise, things like that. That all affects then our spiritual essence in our body, or just how we feel as a, like whether you feel like you're living your best life, right? Like that could be, spirituality can be as simple as that. Like,
yeah, and I'd like to touch on the whole spirituality aspect because I grew up very religious, where I went to like 4 different churches on a Sunday, private school, and it never really vibed with me, you know. So then when I started really understanding science, things started to fall in place, especially when I started reading Joe Dispenza and watching some things on YouTube, which brings me to another thing. When Maeve was talking about how we're getting this information, I think that part of our awakening is due to the technology, is due to the internet, where people were able to share information, right? Where before we lived in the dark ages, like the internet came out since I was a kid. When I was a kid, it came out. So we didn't even have internet. We didn't even have computers. We had the old block ones with, with green. That's the only kind of font color you had. It didn't even have a font. It was just computer writing. So there was no way to get information unless you took your butt to the library, and then even that stuff was censored depending on where you were raised at. Like I was raised in Fargo, North Dakota, and so we were very limited on the information that we have. And now that everybody is sharing this information, something inside of us has woken up, and that is what I believe is the spiritual essence of who we are. Or if you don't like spirit, it's the energy, the soul energy. Soul never dies. Energy never dies. It just transfers, right? And so when you're putting all these words together and worlds are starting to meet up, it all actually makes a lot of sense if you break through the constructs of thoughts that limit your ability to really understand the world. Really is how I'm going to put that. And some people might take that real personal, but
yeah,
this is very important that we understand this in order for us to evolve and grow, because that's the direction that life is going. Mm-hmm. Otherwise you get left behind, right?
Yeah, and it is scary to maybe tap into a spiritual sense of being or a spiritual life if your life's been going just fine with just like doing the everyday thing that everyone else is doing, or by following what other people are saying, and like if that works out for you, then that does. Mm-hmm. But what I'm trying to say to you people though, like, is if that feels scary to you, it might feel scary because at that point we're outsourcing our life to someone else, right? We're outsourcing, like, well, if I just do what these people tell me to do, which is why a lot of people actually follow religion, or they follow these really like smart people or whoever on TV, right? Because they want to feel like they can be led by someone else, because then it takes the responsibility or the burden off of themselves for being responsible for themselves. And we can all understand that. Like, yeah, wouldn't it be nice? Like, I understand that. But there's always a point in someone's life where you're kind of knocked on your knees and you're like, do I really believe in this? Or do I really want to follow this person? Is that really where virtue or ethics, is that really what's ethical? And that's where I think that soul is born, because when you take the reins over yourself, it may be scary, but you're free now. And that's what we talk about, is being free. Like, that also means being free to think what you need to think, and being able to take the journey that your soul is asking you to take. And that requires you to break through the constructs that he said, to break through the illusions and all of the institutional thought that you've been raised with and that is within your body. Mm-hmm. It can be tough, but we're proof that you can do it. There's millions of people around the world who are doing it and live a very spiritually successful life. Okay, so if you're not quite on board, you're not like, oh, I don't know what these people are talking about. A couple examples. So when we talked about somatically healing, right? So I had heard of an example of that would be is if somebody, like, say they got raped, and this person then went on the treadmill and she thought about, and she, it's easy to relive memories or traumatic things in the brain. The brain just repeats it because it's trying to solve it and resolve it. So she would think about it and then run on the treadmill and run. And eventually she reprogrammed her mind to believe that she got away from that predator, right? So she reprogrammed that trauma out of her body. And that's one of the examples for why somatic, or the experience in your body, can be rewired by experiencing a different experience, if that makes sense. And then another example I had, excuse our daughter here. Another example I wanted to talk about was, drumming. So native people used to drum, right, to bring the rains. And it would actually work, but why does it work? Really, the scientific part of it is that the drumming actually disrupted the molecules in the air, and then it broke up that tension in the sky, which would produce rain. And so there's a scientific reason for that. Remember that one, he watches so many videos on this. So there's this one where they this really indigenous remote people in the Amazons or wherever, they had seen an airplane from above, and they had replicated the...
Could we tell the whole story on this one?
Sure. Because
there is a specific story, so if people know.
Sure.
Okay, so during one of the wars, right, these airmen went to these islands where the people had never seen technology or anything like that, right? And they gave these kids and the people, they gave them stuff, supplies and candy and pops and stuff that they never had, and tools and clothes and all that, right? And then when the war was over, all the soldiers left, right? And what happened was they were gone for a long time, right? Just getting repaired after the war. And these people on the island started building up monuments of airplanes out of bamboo and wood. They started painting USA on their chest and started doing ceremonies. Their religious leaders created ceremonies and stories about how to bring these air gods back so that they could get blessed again with all these different foods and supplies and stuff like that, right? And they found out that this happened is because when they did finally come back, they saw all these things erected, life-size wooden airplanes. And they were carrying sticks that they carved out in guns. You can look it up on Google. So that's the story that she's referring to. But go ahead and explain what it is, because I think it's beautiful how you put it.
Well, I just think that that's a great story to remind us that what we think might be spiritual, because we don't have the framework to understand it, doesn't mean that it's woo or scary. We don't need to be scared of it. We just need to understand it better, Yeah,
it's like to them, it was magic and it was the gods. To us, it was every day. They flew on an airplane, you know what I mean? And they had candy and treats that were created in factories, right? So to us, it's nothing. It's just technology. To them, it was woo-woo. And then, so that brings a good point in. That's why we're bringing this whole science and spirituality together, because now with the information that we know and the things that we understand, it really is like a technology. I'm going to be real frank about something. What we're talking about right now, some people are going to be like, oh, that makes sense. And some people are going to be like, that's blasphemy, right? And back in the day, I would have thought this was all blasphemy, right? Until I was able to do the research myself. And this has opened up for me an opportunity to grow as a human being, as a person, as a soul, where I'm not doing all these things to destroy my life because I don't understand or have the power to do it. And I'm giving all the power to something outside of myself because I'm not strong enough or I'm not powerful enough. And that is a shitty place to be at, where you don't feel like you have the power, strength, knowledge, or any of that to be able to do anything with your life, because you have to follow these rules and regulations or these constructs of thoughts that you don't even resonate with. And I'm saying that it is okay. And I'm doing it with so much passion because I understand what it's like to be in that dark place and feel like you have no control. I'm here to tell you that you do have the control. All you need to do is open up your mind, open up your heart, and open up your body to these new things that are available for you to understand how you can operate as a full functioning whole being.
Hopefully those examples help clarify some things.
Yes, and then if we do have a course online that gives you that helps you with the introduction. If you go on our site, thismodernmystic.com, you know, you can go on that course. We also have this 30-day guide to ritual devotion, and in some of our other, if you watch some of our other posts, we talk about the importance of a ritual devotion. So in all of this, if you are finding yourself questioning your life and you're trying to move in a certain direction, in a different direction than what you're going right now, this is the reason why we're teaching these things, is that so that you understand how as a human being you work and how life works on a fundamental basis, so that you can start making these changes and they stick and you actually see progress. That's our whole reason for this. So if you want to strengthen your spirituality or understand your psychology or the science of everything, we're going to keep putting out information to help you and then give you a way to implement this into your life so that you see change, right? And right now what we're doing is we're offering a 30-day guide to ritual devotion. Right? Yeah. And what that does is it's a guide that helps you figure out something new that you want to do, whether it's drumming, whether it's exercising, whether it's meditation or yoga or tantra or anything, any of that. Something that you do new that interrupts your unconscious pattern of life so that you can start making a conscious decision on where you're headed in life.
That's what we're about, is helping people be conscious about their life, and if you want to be consciously living and have that self-agency, which is something we talk about in the course. Yeah. That's where it's at. Yeah. It's at knowing yourself, understanding how the body operates, and then finding some way to be your observer and connect.
Yeah, and there's ways on our site that you can connect up with us if you want more one-on-one or a better understanding of everything that we have going on. All right, and we want to thank you so much for being a part of this journey with us. We really appreciate it that we actually feel honored that you would actually want to spend time with us. I know I'm cool. I know she's cool. I just didn't know if you knew how cool we were. All right.